Welcome back inside the bunker. Wednesday, December 3rd. As always, I'm Kevin Bunk coming to you weekdays for BTO Media. A lot of stuff I want to get to you today. NFL and MLB on the docket. We're leaving basketball out for this episode. Jack Sargent's going to join us midway through. He's going to talk Dodgers, MLB free agency. That's where the baseball stuff's going to come in. We're going to hit this monologue quick. A couple football topics I want to talk about, all in the NFL. College football later in the week, maybe early next week. Definitely early next week at some point after these weekend games conclude. But we're going to get into the NFL stuff today. Cowboys-Lions, perhaps the most high-stake primetime game we have had so far this season. Maybe since last week's primetime games, but this is an awesome game with huge playoff implications. I'll take you through it. Dak's MVP candidacy, Brian Schottenheimer's unbelievable first year in Dallas, real whirlwind for him. I want to talk through that. Week 14 has huge stakes all over the Sunday slate. You have Pittsburgh at Baltimore, Indianapolis at Jacksonville, Houston is at Kansas City, Chicago is in Green Bay, Philadelphia plays the Chargers, and the Bengals and Bills also play at 1 o'clock in Buffalo on Sunday. A little bit of a shift in football, I think, in team building we're going to talk about. I want to enlighten you on what's going on. I think the quarterback position may be losing some value around the NFL. And then I have 6 contenders for the Super Bowl here in Week 14 that I think we have to all be keeping an eye on. Usually, when you enter postseason play, there's only 3 teams in each conference that can really win. Every so often, the 3 teams that can really win get shook up, like Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl with Joe Burrow in year 2. But we're going to break down right now who those 6 teams are, 3 in the AFC, 3 in the NFC, and how other teams can enter into that, how some teams can fall out of that. All right. Cowboys-Lions, Thursday Night Football. This is an unbelievable treat for football fans because we're getting 2 of the most polarizing teams of this season. You, first of all, have this Dallas team that, since the trade deadline, have just been completely revamped. This is a different football team than we saw and thought we knew in the first half of the year. Quinnen Williams has provided them with something, and it's not just Q, but also Logan Wilson and the other acquisitions they got. But Quinnen Williams has really provided them with something here that has just changed their defense and brought an element up the middle that they have not had in this entire Dak Prescott era. You really think about it, they've been loaded with edge rushers with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. Now they don't have that, but they're going to kill you up the middle. And if you have a soft interior line, which Detroit absolutely does, one of the worst interior lines in football, Dallas is going to wreak havoc on you all night long. Right now, the Cowboys open the game as 3-point underdogs on the road. Home team always gets 3 points, so that's about the difference, is the home field advantage in this game. The Lions need a win. 7-5. They're 4-2 at home this year. Cowboys 2-4 on the road. Dallas is going to go in here, and they're going to have to put up points. It's an indoor situation. They're comfortable playing in this type of setting, and the Lions are going to have to get their fans into this game early. It's a primetime game. You're going to be jacked. You're going to have a good amount of Cowboys fans in there anyways. But Prescott's going to have to keep doing what he's been doing all year. You don't want to get out behind this team. Stop the run. Contain Gibbs. He's the entire offense right now. I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown plays in this game, which is another fascinating wrinkle. Who steps up in his absence? But right now, if you're Dallas, you have to be feeling great. And if you're Detroit, you got to feel a little freaked about this game. This is a scary game for a Detroit Tigers fan, or Detroit Lions fan, because you're hosting a game that 5 weeks ago felt like an absolute win. You lose this game, Dallas jumps you in the playoff race. They're going to be 7-5-1 with a win. Detroit would fall to 7-6. That tie might go a really long way for Dallas in getting the 6th seed or the 7th seed in the NFC playoff, unless Green Bay loses their games to Chicago, and then Dallas has to try and get the tiebreaker over Green Bay, which is not going to happen for the Cowboys. So you have this tie that can make you one better in the win column all year long against these other teams in the hunt. That's a killer for Detroit, for Carolina, who's 7-6 right now. That is an absolute blow. If Dallas is the team you're fighting with for that playoff spot, you need them to lose an extra game now, because I think in the mind of the Cowboys, they gave up 40 points at home on Sunday Night Football to the Packers. That's almost like a loss. but they came out of it with the tie. What a difference in the record it makes in this NFC playoff picture. And again, for Detroit, you lose tomorrow, you're out of that spot. Dak Prescott this year, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 303 attempts, or 303 completions on 437 attempts. He's having one of the best seasons of his career. The biggest part of this career year for Prescott is George Pickens. The addition of Pickens, Jerry Jones, looks like a genius, and he knows he was with this move because he's been telling you about it every time he speaks to the media about the George Pickens trade and how great he did bring in George Pickens. But he's right. 73 catches, 8 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards, over 1,100 yards now. This is an unbelievable season for Pickens, who never came close to these numbers with Pittsburgh. Pickens, a second-round pick out of Georgia. A lot of promise there. There were some concerns, and I think Tomlin decided we're not going to deal with this stuff because we're not getting production here anyways. Ships him out to Dallas, to the perfect offensive system and situation for Pickens, a team that plays from behind a lot, has a quarterback that puts up massive numbers every year when he plays, and an offensive head coach who's familiar with this offense in year one. This was a perfect situation, and then CeeDee Lamb gets hurt, and Pickens just benefited from it unbelievably. So for Dallas, the Pickens ad has taken Prescott's game to a new level, and now tomorrow night they're going to have to throw to score against Detroit. Javonte Williams has been a really nice player too for Dallas this year, but your offense isn't going to run through him. He's looking for 1,000 yards tomorrow night, though, on the ground, 45 more. We'll get him 1,000, currently sits at 955, and Dallas needs to win, obviously. You lose this game, and you feel like you're out of the playoff race, the playoff hunt, because you're going to fall to 6-1. Detroit now gets that extra game on you, and it's just a discouraging loss pulling up the playoff standings now. Right now, Detroit's the 8th seed behind San Fran, Green Bay, and Seattle, who hold the 3 wild card spots. For Tampa and Carolina, feels like a race to win your division. Doesn't feel like either of those teams are going to end up in a wild card spot. Lions, Cowboys, the 8 and 9 seeds right now. Either team loses this game, you feel like you're toast. Feels like you're done. The Packers have a spot over San Fran, but they're 1 win worse. They're 8-3-1. San Fran's 9-4, but loss column's going to decide it because San Fran has their bye this week. So if Detroit wins and Green Bay loses to Chicago, Green Bay stays in the wild card spot. If Detroit wins and Chicago loses, now Detroit's 1 game behind the Bears with a game left against them. Detroit should hope for that outcome. If they lose this week, the Lions have a 19% chance to get into the postseason. If they win, 55% chance. And then for Dallas, if they lose, it's a 9% playoff probability and a 39% playoff probability if they win. So a 20-point difference for Dallas in the playoff percentages, and for Detroit, a 36-point difference in the playoff percentages. That's how much is on the line for these two teams in this game. Other games this week that are going to be big time are the, first of all, Pittsburgh-Baltimore slop fest that we're going to get. I don't even know if I'm going to watch much of this game. It's such a boring game. Pittsburgh-Baltimore, it's a great NFC North setting, playing for a division late in the season. Right now, both teams 6-6, but it's been a rough watch. I'd be surprised if Baltimore lost this game. They're a 6-point favorite at home. I think that Pittsburgh shot. Last week was a real nail in the coffin type of week for me. The way they played against Buffalo, it just looked like, and this is a Buffalo team, this is not the same squad we've seen the last few years. The way that Pittsburgh played against Buffalo on Sunday felt like a team that's just dead. And you got Rodgers in the postgame, passing blame around, but defending the coaches. The one constant, everyone still defends Tomlin there. There's not a leak or an ounce of negativity from that room about the coach, as much as the rest of the world thinks he sucks and want him fired, especially the rest of the world in Pittsburgh. I don't feel that way as an outsider, but they need to win this game to keep their fan base happy. If you lose this, both fan bases here, first of all, both fan bases have great head coaches, have great organizations, hate both of them, want everybody fired, want clean house situations after this season. They hate Rodgers now in Pittsburgh. Ravens fans are pretty frustrated with the way this offense has looked with Lamar back. He does not look healthy. He's got like 11 leg injuries this year that have popped up on the injury report. He's clearly bothered in his right leg. He's got a knee injury, an ankle injury, a hamstring. Clearly bothered right now by something. Does not look like his usual self at all. Has no running ability whatsoever. Doesn't even want to run. A few easy 6, 7, 8 yard gains that he'll just take. But overall, for Jackson, he has not been nearly the same player. So this is a low-scoring game, I think. The over-under in it's 45.5 feels about right. Maybe feels like an under. I don't think both teams here go over 20 points. I think one will and probably be a touchdown difference. Baltimore maybe a 24-17 final in this game. That brings you to 41 total points. I like the Ravens in that one. The next big game is Indianapolis and Jacksonville down in Florida. Now, this one, talk about a massive playoff implication game. If Jacksonville wins, they have a 96% chance of making the playoffs. If Indianapolis loses, they go down to 55%. They were as high as 90% a few weeks ago. Now they're on that pendulum of a loss is 55% and a win is 86%, because you're playing for the division right now if you're Indianapolis. I don't think Jacksonville's totally playing for the division yet, because they have to play Houston twice in the next 3 weeks after this. So Indianapolis, who doesn't get Indianapolis plays Jacksonville twice in the next few weeks. Jacksonville plays Houston once. I messed up the schedule there. So Indianapolis plays Jacksonville twice. They're playing for the division this week because you need to sweep them right now to get that division title. And this week you can jump back into a top 3 seed in the AFC with a win, but at Jacksonville, I don't see it. Daniel Jones is banged up. He does not look healthy. And that video of him at practice is just spooking me out, man. I mean, I cannot get around to the idea that Jones is 100% good to go, that he can run, that he's going to be able to make the plays that he was making in the first half of the season. Jacksonville defense has been very good, and their offense does just enough. Just enough every week. Lawrence will make 2 or 3 throws that blow you away. He also does just enough to keep the other team in the game. But Jacksonville enters this one as 2.5-point favorites and a real shot at putting themselves in the driver's seat in the division. They're 8-4. Indianapolis is 8-4. Houston 7-5 with an unbelievably high-stakes game against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. Kansas City can jump from the 10 seed to the 8 seed with a win over Houston. Both would be 7-6 if Kansas City won. Houston 7-5, Chiefs 6-6. If the Chiefs lose, 11% playoff probability. If the Chiefs win, 48% playoff probability. And then for the Texans, 45% with a loss, 83% with a win. Absolutely feels right. A win would go a really long way for them, because this is the ideal scenario for Houston. Is whatever happens in the Colts-Jags game, fine. You almost want the Jags to just win, get that out of the way. You beat both of them in the last month, so you're okay with your tiebreaker scenarios there. But the ideal situation is Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, puts them at 6-7. The Texans win, beat the Chiefs. So now the Texans are 8-5. The Steelers are 6-7. The Chiefs are 6-7. And the Dolphins in the 11 seed at best are 6-7 if they beat the Jets on Sunday. So you are locked into the top 8 teams. And then if Cincinnati can pick off Buffalo in Buffalo, you're in the 7th seed. 83% playoff probability with a win for Houston. And that's exactly why. Because you're projecting that the other underdogs don't win those games. Maybe that Kansas City loses to Houston. Obviously would have to happen in that scenario. That's a dream for the Texans, considering where they were the first month and a half of the season. That's a dream. You feel like you're locked into a top 8 seed. Something would have to go incredibly wrong for you to not be a top 8 seed. And you need to get one spot better to get into the postseason. And who knows with Buffalo? Who knows? And who knows with the Colts? One of those 2 teams can drop out. Same with the Chargers' tough schedule. Those 3 teams all 8-4 in the wild cards. None of them are locks. Houston is looking at these teams with confidence. They take care of their business against the Chiefs on Sunday. It's going to be a tough road game. You take care of your business there, you're going to get into the playoffs. Philadelphia and the Chargers. have a big game. The Chargers, once again, I'm not going to go too much further into it because they're one of those 8-4 teams in that playoff scenario where you got to get a win. It's a Monday Night Football game, and Philadelphia is just reeling. Does it feel like the worst or the best time to play the Eagles? I'm not sure. They're a favorite in this game on the road, -1.5 against a banged-up Chargers team still. I don't know if I would be totally all in on the Eagles like a lot of people are. I was on Friday. I thought Friday the Bears were in a lot of trouble. You're getting the Eagles at the worst time. They're trying to get right, and they're going to do it against the Chicago team that hasn't played too much good competition. Wrong. Dead wrong. Eagles, right now, this might be the best time to play them. For all the people who are saying it's the worst time to play Philadelphia, they're a pretty safe playoff spot because they're 8-4. There's not much jeopardy in the division unless they lose this week, then Dallas wins. Then we can start having that conversation about the Eagles being in playoff jeopardy. But even then, you feel like they'll get a wild card spot. With a loss this week to the Chargers, they have an 88% playoff probability, 98% with a win. A win basically locks up the Eagles to win this division, especially if Dallas loses tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football. Then you have the best game of the whole weekend, Chicago at Green Bay. This is for the toughest division in the sport in the NFC North, where Chicago's just stunned everybody. I can't believe that we're entering this Week 14 game. This is the Sunday Fox 425 game, must-see TV, appointment television. I can't believe we're entering this game with Chicago going to Lambeau Field with a 9-3 record to play Green Bay, who's 8-3-1. And this is where that tie with Dallas comes into play for the Packers. You wish you had that win. You wish you had that one. These two teams play each other twice in the next 3 weeks. At Lambeau this week, Soldier Field in 3 weeks. And if you're a Bears fan, I don't want to say there's a house money feeling to this game, but there's a, let's go into Lambeau and shock the world. And if we don't, we're way ahead of schedule. We're 9-4. We just want to see him, give him a good game, and hopefully we get him again in the next 2 weeks. But what a win this would be for Chicago, who's already in a big-time playoff driver's seat. We want to talk playoff probabilities again because that's been a theme of this show, is they have a big swing here too. 91% playoff probability with a win, 66% playoff probability with a loss. Green Bay, it's a little less on the line, 76% playoff probability, but who even knows with the percentages? This is where we run into a problem with the analytics and the playoff probability because Green Bay falls to 8-4-1. That tie might be a big reason for the difference, but these two teams, Chicago might be better. We're going to learn a lot about the Bears and the Packers on Sunday. And Lambeau Field has been a house of horrors for Chicago Bears fans. Imagine Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams go in there and get this win on Sunday to put themselves at 10-3, 2 games up in the division, or I guess a game and a half up on the division. Once again, the Packers have a tie to their record. That would be one of the biggest wins, regular season wins, in Bears history if Ben Johnson goes into Chicago, or goes into Lambeau, and gets that win. And then in 2 weeks, you get them at your place to bury him. Huge game for both teams because you now need to ensure you get your home game at the minimum between these two squads over the next 3 weeks. You got 2 games, 1 at each home field. Packers are up first. Green Bay's got to get this win. They're a touchdown favorite on Sunday. I think they'll get the win, but I do not think it's going to be that easy. And I feel like the Bears being a touchdown underdog is very disrespectful after watching them go into Philly on Friday. Remember, they have an extra 2 days of rest here too now that Green Bay does not have. Chicago's got a lot of luxuries heading into this game that the Packers don't. Pressure's on the Packers. Pressure's on LaFleur. It's on Jordan Love. I think they're ready for it, though. Micah Parsons, I think, showed us on Thursday that he's ready to be that guy the Packers traded for. He's been awesome all year anyways. But I think this team's ready to go in, control a game, and get a win. All right, we'll go to a quick shift here in football. The quarterback position. Is it losing some value? I just have a few notes on it that I want to touch on that I thought were interesting. And I've been starting to see this with team building, with teams really making sure the rest of their roster is able to win games in spite of the quarterback. I think we're seeing it with Denver this year. We're seeing it with Chicago this year. We're seeing it with San Francisco this year. We're seeing it with San Francisco almost every year. No disrespect to Purdy either. But right now, Caleb Williams is 24th in passer rating. Behind Michael Penix, behind Kyler Murray, behind Justin Fields. Bears have the best record in the NFC. And Johnson admitted it the other day. We're winning in spite of our passing game. It has to get better. Brock Purdy, 26th in passer rating. Niners are 9-4. They have a winning record with Purdy under center. Bo Nix is 32nd in passer rating. That's worse than Spencer Rattler. Broncos are 10-2 atop the AFC. Trevor Lawrence, 38th in passer rating. That's worse than Tyler Shuck, Davis Mills. Geno Smith has a better passer rating than Trevor Lawrence this year. Jacksonville's 8-4. Meanwhile, some of the best passers in the league this season, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, not in playoff spots. And you could even throw in the Bengals, who have 4 wins this year. Their only chance is a complete collapse of the Ravens and Steelers and the Bengals winning out themselves. The only chance that they have to get into the postseason is that division. But you could throw them into this fold of quarterbacks who play well, even though it hasn't been Burrow all year. Burrow and Flacco have played really well, and they haven't won games. There's a situation going on in the league right now where I think rebuilding teams are better off pouring their draft capital and finances into building the team out around the quarterback and insert quarterback second. If you're a team like Cleveland or like the Jets, and you have multiple first-round picks this year in a draft that's potentially a one-quarterback draft with Fernando Mendoza, say that the Raiders get the first pick. Nobody else is getting a quarterback. Ty Simpson goes back to Alabama. Dante Moore goes back to Oregon, even though I do think one of those guys will come out. Either way, you're not in a position to get a quarterback. Instead of using those assets to trade up, use those assets to grab the best defensive player available. Use those assets to grab the best playmaker available. Put another resource into your offensive line. So when the time comes and the quarterback falls to you, and you feel like there's a free agent quarterback or a veteran quarterback that you can move for, it's going to happen at some point within the next 2 years where you can get a quarterback you really like the natural way. That's when you pounce. And that's what these teams did. Chicago messed it up with Fields. They got it right with Williams. They waited and didn't go for Bryce Young. They traded out. Built the team up around him. Williams still isn't great, but the rest of the team is. They can survive. Jacksonville has put so many resources in throughout the Trevor Lawrence era that they're finally able to start winning even without him taking that step that we've been waiting for. It's an interesting development in the National Football League, and I think it's going to play a lot into our draft discussions in the offseason. Last up, I know I went longer here than I wanted to. Who cares, though? 6 teams for the Super Bowl. AFC, I really struggled with. Really struggled with the AFC teams. And I think right now, if I had to pick 6 teams, and 3 of them are in each conference, I do this every year, I'm going with Denver and New England easy. Both are the 2 best teams in the AFC record-wise. They seem like the 2 best on the field. New England feels like the best team in the AFC, I think, by far. Denver's flawed on offense. Defense is great. They make enough plays. Bo Nix is a great late-game quarterback, which is really all you need in the postseason, but their offensive line's terrific. But I need to see more from their offense more consistently. And then the bad game on Washington leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But Denver's in. New England's in. They're the best team in all 3 phases in the AFC. And then Buffalo. I think Allen's ability to just put up 6 touchdowns, their playoff experience, it's got to be more valuable to me than what Jacksonville, LA, Indianapolis, Houston, what they can offer to me offensively. But I do love Houston too. NFC, easy. NFC was very easy for me. Rams, Packers, Seahawks. I think the Rams are by far the best team in the NFL. I don't care about the Panthers lost that much. Packers look like they're ready to finally make that step into the upper echelon of the NFC with Jordan Love. He's been playing so great this year, and Parsons is really coming to life. And then the Seahawks, who a lot of people wrote off after the Rams game, they lost by 2 points. They missed the 60-yard game-winning field goal, and their quarterback had 4 interceptions and no touchdowns. They almost won that game with their quarterback having 4 interceptions and no touchdowns. They lost by 2 points. They were at home. They can't trust Darnold moving forward in big games. He has to show it to you now. You know, you have every right to continue playing him, obviously. You don't even have another option. But the big game Darnold narrative is real. And you went on the road to SoFi and lost that game by 2 points. You feel like when you come back around in week 16 and they're at your place, you get Stafford outdoors, you get the Rams outdoors, play physical again. It's a primetime game too. It's one of the great games that we have left on the schedule. You feel like you can go and get a win there. And I think that they should have the utmost confidence in themselves as an NFC contender. They're better than Philly. They're better than San Fran. They're better than Dallas. They're better than Detroit. I think they'd probably beat Chicago right now, but that's a tough one. Chicago, we're going to learn so much about on Sunday, and they could crack this top 3 in the NFC if they win on Sunday. All right, I'm going to take a quick step out, and then Jack Sargent's going to jump on and join us, talk a little MLB free agency, some Dodgers disaster scenarios for the rest of baseball. So looking forward to that. That's the wrap on football. We'll be back with more football talk after the weekend and a lot of college football stuff. But right now, Jack Sargent's going to join us. All right, now joined by Jack Sargent to talk a little MLB free agency. As promised, Jack, we did a big few things. Myself and Mike did Yankees budget breakdown, Mets breakdown, predictions for both teams. Then yesterday we did a top 20 remaining free agent after the Williams signing, Cease signing, top 20 remaining guys that we thought. I'm going to jump right into this because we had a bit of a Major League Baseball disaster scenario where the Dodgers signed Edwin Diaz and Kyle Tucker. I think it's a realistic possibility. Do you think it's possible that the two-time defending champs end up with Tucker and Diaz?
I think anything's a realistic possibility with the Dodgers just because the money is there. And also, there's a little bit of spite nature to this front office, to some of the rest of the league, of just like, we're going to do this and you can't stop us. What I do think would happen, though, is if you make a move for Tucker, they're going to move on from Teoscar Hernandez. I will say, though, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to make the move for Edwin Diaz. And I think it's because of the way that the Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates signings played out. I don't think this organization wants to commit big dollars again to relievers after doing that last offseason. This was never an organization that was really rah-rah on going out and getting big money relievers. They did that with Joe Kelly after the 2018 season, and Joe Kelly had a really bad time with the Dodgers in 2019. And so they pulled back from that and didn't really go big name guys in free agency from the bullpen side. They would go take 1-year flyers on guys. That's what they did with Blake Trinan, which was a great signing at the time. And Blake Trinan ended up winning 3 World Series championships with the Dodgers and heavily contributing to 2 of them. But I think after the way that the last couple of signings in the bullpen from last offseason played out, I don't think that they'll go for Diaz just based on that organizational philosophy, because you did see them take a step back after the Kelly signing. It wasn't a total bust, but Joe Kelly definitely did not contribute to the Dodgers the way that they would have hoped he would have going into that 2019 season after the postseason of the World Series he had for the Red Sox in that World Series year.
Do you think that the Dodgers even do any? I think the Tucker move makes a good amount of sense if they can move Teoscar appropriately. But do you think after the 2 titles that they actually do again spend big on one of these top guys, or do you think Tucker, and I guess we could throw in Bellinger too, we'll talk about him in a second anyways, do you think they actually go after one of these guys, or is it more cosmetic moves, try and get better in the bullpen with cheaper options, and then see where you're at the deadline?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to lead cosmetic moves cheaper on the bullpen side, just because I don't really think there's the only reason that you make the move for Kyle Tucker is if you're saying we cannot do Teoscar Hernandez with his defense, which I think is a valid point. If you want to say we're going to move off of Teoscar Hernandez because the right field defense is just absolutely a non-starter. However, a lot of that was necessitated by the fact that Betts had to play shortstop because Mookie Betts is naturally a right fielder. And I think in a perfect situation, the organization wants to keep him in right field and have Teoscar Hernandez in left field because that's the way it was last year. It's still 2025. That's the way it was in the 2024 year, and Teoscar Hernandez was in left field. And again, Teoscar Hernandez is going to be bad defensively no matter where you play him, but you can hide him a little bit more in left field than you would in the more premium position in right. But at the end of the day, I think the organization is content with where they are. But this is one where I don't know. Me personally, I don't want Kyle Tucker. I am uneasy about contributing that amount of money to him. I know he's a couple seasons removed from an MVP caliber season, but I didn't love his back half of 2025 as no one did. And I just don't think he brings enough to the table to justify spending the kind of money that you're going to spend on him when you already have the pieces on this roster that you have, because you're wondering about the potential long-term decline of Mookie Betts. And Kyle Tucker's not the same age as Mookie Betts, but I wonder what the situation would be if you fast forward a couple years from now, you commit that big money to Kyle Tucker, and Kyle Tucker is on a similar progression to Betts. All of a sudden, you've got two guys that are on that same career decline trajectory. That becomes a problem 3 years down the line. I don't think it's a great long-term move for the Dodgers. I think anybody who makes the move for Kyle Tucker, you're bringing in Kyle Tucker to try to win you a championship within the next 4 seasons. You could even compress that down to 3 seasons. I don't think it's a great long-term play in any way you slice it. And especially for the Dodgers, there's no real need to do that, in my opinion.
Kyle Tucker versus Cody Bellinger, just in general for teams that might be interested. We don't even have to cater it right to the Dodgers. But Tucker versus Bellinger is interesting because if you project the contracts, there's somewhere between $6, $7, $8 million difference per year. The annual salary is not going to be that far off with Tucker, but the years are the difference where there's a 5-year increase on the Tucker contract versus Bellinger. If you were a GM, Cody Bellinger versus Kyle Tucker, who would you favor considering the contracts as well? Let's say Tucker gets an 11 for about 400. It's close to 37 million a year. And Bellinger 6 for 180, 30 million a year, maybe even a little less than that. Who would you go after?
I'd go after Bellinger. I'll be completely honest with you. I'll go after Bellinger. And I think that Bellinger has been underrated the last couple of off seasons. And I'll be honest with you, I was not disappointed. A lot of Dodger fans want Cody Bellinger back because of the nostalgia from the late 2010s teams and him and the role that he played in getting the Dodgers the World Series championship in 2020. I've never had that nostalgia attachment to Cody Bellinger. I've never felt like the amount of money that you would have needed to commit to him was worth it for the player that he is. But if I'm a GM and I'm looking at the situation that I have, Bellinger just is off of a season where he hit 272, 334, 480 with 29 home runs, 98 RBIs. Couple seasons removed from a similar season, 26-97, 307 average, 356, 525. That was his 2023 with the Cubs, obviously. So that's the benchmark for Cody Bellinger. And I think for the type of player that he is, I would go for him, especially if I'm a GM of a team where I already have a couple of elite pieces in play. I'd slot him in. If I'm the Phillies and I look, especially if we're bringing back Kyle Schwarber, I'm looking at him as my number one option. You have Trey Turner already. There's some pieces that are put in. There's some pieces that are in place already. I would go for Cody Bellinger as opposed to Kyle Tucker because of the years difference. And I don't think he's that far off of Kyle Tucker as a player. He's always been elite defensively. And he's not going to be a 40 home run guy. I think we know that about Cody Bellinger, but he's going to give you high 20s in the home runs total. And if he gives you close to 280 and 340 on base, then I say close to it. Last year he was on the low end. But if I get a 276 .333 season from Cody Bellinger as far as home runs average and on base at the price that you lined up, I'm taking that.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you. And Tucker, you got to see if that second half, was he actually because of an injury? Was it a phantom IL stint? I know that Counsell said he was injured, and it did seem like he had the hand injury. I'm not trying to discount that, but if there's something there that might be alarming when it comes to Tucker being able to perform over 162 for the first few years of his next contract, which is going to be over 10 seasons, you got to kind of steer clear of that. I feel like the guy ended up with one of the worst years of his career, really since 2021. This was by far his worst season in his age 28 year. He hit 266, and he was on a straight track to be an MVP finalist in June, and he finished the year playing 136 games with 22 homers, 73 RBIs, and 377 on base. So if that's the worst year of Kyle Tucker, then you're excited about it. But if you have an inkling that there's going to be a handful of years like last season, how do you go near that?
Let me give you something else with Kyle Tucker. So 2022 was a year that he finished 15th in MVP voting, was an All-Star, won a Gold Glove. That year he hit 257, 330, 478. So those were his slash lines. And then 30 home runs, 107 RBIs. And that's marginally better as far as the home runs, the RBIs, and the slug for... Actually, I don't even think it was the slug. It's marginally better as far as the home runs and the RBIs are concerned to Bellinger. And he's 28 right now, whereas Bellinger's 30, which, goodness gracious, that makes me feel old that Cody Bellinger's 30 now. But... if you're going to say that's more along the line of a season that Kyle Tucker's going to give you, or that's the type of season that Kyle Tucker could give you versus what you're going to get from Bellinger, that's not much better. And again, that's a little bit cherry picking because I took the 1 year that he was really low in average, really low in slug, really low in on base. And he's got 2 years aside of that where he hit in the 280s. 2024, he was a 400 on base guy, 500 slug guy, 290 with the 23 home runs, 49 RBIs that year. And that was in only 78 games. So, whatever that projects out to across a 162 season, probably close to that 2023 year. But that's the thing. I look at that 2022 year, and that's a good season for Kyle Tucker. But if that is closer to if the middle ground is somewhere between that 2022 and 23 season for Kyle Tucker, if you merge those and you say, okay, that somewhere in between 22 and 23 is what you're going to get for Kyle Tucker across 11 years. No, thank you. I'm going elsewhere.
And I feel like from a Yankees perspective, this has been a big debate with the fans, and it's going to be the same for Phillies fans and a little bit for Dodgers fans. But I really think you're right. The Bellinger reunion is very unrealistic for the Dodgers. So I don't think it should even be a question.
I think very quickly, the Bellinger reunion is a fan fantasy. I don't think this organization told you we don't want Cody Bellinger because they moved off of him. It's entirely driven by nostalgia that Dodger fans have to Cody Bellinger's contributions to making it to 3 World Series, winning a world championship, and beating the Giants in 2021. By the way, also, Cody Bellinger, not a great playoff performer overall.
He's not. And he was awful for the Yankees in the playoffs this year, too. So for the Dodgers, I don't know if I go near that. And then from the Yankees' perspective, I don't know how much because there's got to be some sort of, I don't know if I'd say metric for it, but there's got to be some sort of gauge for how much they think a guy will produce more hitting next to Judge in a lineup versus wherever they just came from. And with Bellinger, what you just got with Judge worked for 162 games. Defensively, he was just a terrific add for the Yankees because of the versatility that he gave you. Played well at Yankee Stadium. The swing plays perfectly there, actually. But then, does Kyle Tucker give you more of the run that he was giving you in 2024 when he hits next to Judge? I don't know what the answer would be, but Tucker versus Bellinger is certainly an interesting debate this offseason. I think you hit on a lot of the good points. Let's go to a couple other free agents that kind of have a Dodgers tie to it also. I feel like Bo Bichette is very undervalued right now in free agent discourse. Not a good defensive shortstop, not going to give you terrific base running, but an unbelievable hitter for the position and a guy that if I'm Toronto, I'm definitely trying to bring back because he was invaluable in the regular season for them offensively. And when you lost him, you saw them start to slide a little in September. Obviously, it worked out. They got to the World Series and were just 2 outs away from winning the whole thing. But
Really? They were?
Oh, yeah, you remember that pretty well. Bichette, are the Dodgers going to be interested in any shortstops this offseason? Because you mentioned it earlier. I don't think the Betts thing is the best scenario for them, even though they've won 2 rings without a shortstop, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough. I'll be honest with you, though. I don't think I would pick up. I don't think I would go commit the money to Bo Bichette to play him at shortstop. I've been talking to Clay Wagner over at Murray State about the potential for him going to the Red Sox and being the third base solution for them.
Yeah.
If the Dodgers were going to make that kind of a move and potentially talk about moving positions with him, I don't think you would do that for him to play third base because then you wouldn't have picked up the Muncy option. But
makes sense.
That's interesting because he does get on base. He does give you a good average, but I don't think that this team already has enough defensive problems. I don't think this team wants to get worse defensively. And I feel like that's the move. That's a move that would make the Dodgers worse defensively.
Last 5 seasons, or maybe the last 6 years for Bichette, played 5 years with over an 800 OPS. I believe out of the last 6 years, that's the most by a shortstop. I think Lindor also has 5, but interesting note on him. Another reunion possibility for the Dodgers. Would there be any interest in Corey Seager if he was to be traded?
Oh, that's another interesting thing because I think you're talking about another situation where a guy who is not good defensively at shortstop and that the Dodgers were comfortable with moving off of Corey Seager because they had Trey Turner in the building. And ultimately, they didn't bring back Trey Turner. That was a move that I agreed with. And since then, the Dodgers have kind of been playing patty cakes at shortstop and, mixing and matching with things of that nature. So that's interesting. Again, I don't think that they would make a move to add a lot of money and not good defense because you already have a guy who you probably are paying a little bit more than you want to be paying in Teoscar Hernandez, and you're having the questions of, do we want to move off of him or do we not want to move off of him? At the end of the day, I don't think there's going to be any, and I am probably going to be completely wrong in this, and they're going to do one of these major moves. But if I'm running the Dodgers, if I'm playing MLB The Show, I'm not going out and making any of these marquee moves. I'm making cosmetic moves, finding guys on the low end to get in to improve the bullpen, looking for more role players that could be slotted in and make a progression up like has happened the last few years with this organization.
All right, around the league, some of the bigger name free agents, Alonso, Schwarber, where do you see those 2 guys ending up, or at least who do you think the suitors will be?
So what I've been saying on the radio here at Coastal for the last few weeks about Schwarber, and I think that this is a common opinion, I think that the Mets will have the highest offer at the end of the day. And you guys have me leaning one way. Other shows that I listen to that talk about Kyle Schwarber from the Red Sox side have me leading the other way. At points I've said, oh, he feels like such a Met, but at other times I've said Kyle Schwarber feels like a Red Sox.
Yeah.
I think Steve Cohen will have the highest offer. And I think it's just a matter of whether or not he wants to go to New York or he wants to stay in Philly, or maybe the Red Sox try to play that game with Steve Cohen. Newsflash, if you're going to try to play the outbid Steve Cohen game, you're not going to win that game. Just ask Hal Steinbrenner how that went.
On Schwarber real quick, while we're talking Red Sox, Mets, and the usual suspects. So we did our predictions yesterday for these top 20 guys left. So it's everyone from Kyle Tucker to basically JT Realmuto and a few other veteran starting pitchers that are 4th or 5th guys in rotation. And we did our predictions, and I'm looking really hard on. So I pride myself on trying to get a few of these right every year. And there's always a few surprises, right? Like there's always the 2 or 3 guys in the top 25. They're like, oh, wow, I'm shocked that team gave that contract out. Like I think Cease was already one. Cease to Toronto for that money was massive. But for Schwarber, I was doing a lot of different reading, going deep into a couple beat reporters that I've never heard of, columns that seemingly have good local reputations. And I think the Reds are going to make a serious play for him here. was looking at the Reds' payroll numbers, and normally they spend around $120 million. This past year, they were at 83, and they want to get back up to that 115, 120. Schwarber's from Cincinnati, and I think Francona might just go to them and say, if you're going to spend this money, get me a power bat. Get me a guy in the lineup that can win us a few games with his bat this year, because they absolutely did not have that last year.
And nobody, sorry to cut you off, nobody talks about that ballpark being such a hitter-friendly ballpark.
So hitter-friendly.
325 to right field.
It's a dream. And so as we're doing this, I open my phone for a second and I see Kyle Schwarber, Ken Rosenthal rumor that says the Reds have serious interest in Kyle Schwarber and Schwarber's interested in the potential homecoming. So, like, who knows whether that, Steve Cohen maybe blows him out of the water by $20 million and it doesn't matter anyways. But how would that, reaction be if the Reds gave 4 for $130 out to Kyle Schwarber?
That would have to be one of the biggest contracts that they've signed in their franchise history, would it not?
I'd imagine Votto is their biggest contract, whatever his extension was.
No, I'm sure, but it'd have to be within the top 10 because that organization does not spend money.
Yeah, I'm going to Google it right now.
Well, while you do that, just to touch on Alonso a little bit, I think he is the follow-on move for the Red Sox when they don't get Kyle Schwarber. Because at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to the Red Sox. And I don't love that move for Boston because I don't think Alonso is all that defensively. But they do need first base. And, you talk yourself into he's a right-handed power bat at Fenway with the monster. He'll hit some home runs, and at the end of the day, that's what you're bringing him in to do. I don't think it's a perfect fit. I would do if I'm John Henry, I would do everything I could to get Kyle Schwarber. But for lack of a better option, I don't think it's the wrong decision for Pete Alonso, and they have to do something to add some power to that lineup.
The Reds contracts, just while we're on it for a moment, biggest one is Votto by far. 12 for $251. It's 20 a year, 20.9 a year. Actually, it's 251.5, so it's an even 21 per year. But anyways, do you want to take a guess who is second or third?
Oh, second. Okay. No, I don't think they ever extended Johnny Cueto, so it wouldn't be that.
Nope. Yeah.
Is the Griffey deal the
Griffey's second?
Yep.
9 years, 116 and a half.
Yeah, and that was 25 years ago.
Yep. 2000.
Okay. Goodness gracious. What would 3 be? Ooh.
3 is, I did not have 3 on the radar. It was in 2014.
Is it Todd Frazier?
No.
Okay.
2014, they gave this contract out.
I'm trying to think of who was, I don't think I'm going to get this. I wasn't that locked into offseason in 2014.
It was a Homer Bailey extension. 6 years, $105 million. And then the next biggest contract they ever gave out was 7 for $66 to Gino Suarez in 2017. So the Schwarber deal would by far be their biggest annual money ever allocated. But Homer Bailey, he gets his extension in 2014. He never pitches below a 5.5 ERA again for Cincinnati.
That was, what a callback. What a callback to mid-2000s. Or mid-2010s.
Continue on Pete Alonso and that topic. Where you think that Alonso ended up? You think this is a Mets reunion easy? Or because Mike has him going to the Red Sox. You mentioned Boston. I think he goes back to the Mets because I do think Boston's going to prioritize Bregman because it fit last year when he was on the field. And I think Cora loves him. So I think they go the Bregman route. I don't see them getting both. I think they get one of the 3 of Bregman, Schwarber, Alonso, and I think because of the contract and the familiarity, they'll just choose to go with Alex.
I think you have to bring back Alex Bregman if you're the Red Sox, especially if you make the moves that you made in the spring, or by that point it was the summer. Whenever you make the Devers move, you're clearly signaling we are committing to Alex Bregman. You can't then make that move, change the trajectory of your franchise, and let that guy walk in free agency. Especially with how much Cora seems to love him. And by the way, Cora loving Alex Bregman, that seems so obvious because of the Houston connection beforehand. And Bregman had a good season. The Red Sox were a completely different team when Alex Bregman was not playing baseball for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a tweet very early in September, which has been making me have a very eerie feeling about Alex Bregman, because there are concerns about him being a guy who is approaching his 30s as a third baseman with the potential to decline off of a 1-year deal with the Red Sox. And I forget what Red Sox account tweeted this, but they were saying, where have I seen this before?
Yeah,
2010, Adrian Beltre. The Red Sox let him walk, and look what Adrian Beltre did with the Texas Rangers. So I feel like there are legitimate concerns with Alex Bregman, but I think he is a good baseball player. And outside of him as a player, if you are making the organizational moves that you are going to make in the summer, you have to bring that guy back, because you traded away your franchise player essentially because you also had this guy in the building. And then if you come out of that whole saga with neither of them on your baseball team and Bo Bichette becomes your fallback, I think that's a problem.
And we even laid out a couple other scenarios where you go get Pete Alonso or you go get Kyle Schwarber and you bring in the third baseman, first baseman from Japan, Kazuma Akamoto, who's a real contact guy. Probably gives you a similar bat that Yoshida gave them in the first year or two that they had him, but could lock down third base for you. I agree with you, though. After the whole Devers saga, keep Bregman. Once again, there's the familiarity there. And with Roman Anthony coming back and getting his first full year of health, hopefully, and being on the field and being that superstar that we saw him be for a few weeks in the summer before getting injured, just keep Bregman in the lineup with him. He's such a savvy veteran guy. You're probably only going to have to give him a 4 or 5 year deal. Big money, though. He's going to get $30 million a year probably. But just keep Bregman around. It works. You don't want to go and mess things up. Schwarber would make sense, too, because I know you're getting the DH, but this is a bat that we know is going to work at Fenway because it has before.
Absolutely. And I that would also right the wrong of letting him walk in the first place.
And Alonso's just piques my curiosity as a free agent because a lot of teams need that first baseman. Obviously, Boston's been desperate for a first baseman to work out since Ortiz, but he can't play the field. So are you really going to go and get a guy who has no interest in moving off the position, does not want a DH, and he's going to give you 35 homers and 100 RBIs because he does it every year, but now you're asking him to be the guy. He's not hitting behind Lindor and Soto again next year, and he can't play the field and he can't run the bases. So it's a lot of money potentially to allocate for a team that does have a pretty tight budget right now.
I'm going to say this, 20, 30 years ago, he would be such a Red Sox because that was a Red Sox move. The old regimes loved those first basemen that all they do is hit home runs and they don't play defense. They don't run the bases well. They strike out a lot. This is he is such a historical Red Sox player. If you look back at the way that the Red Sox built their teams through the years, he feels like such a Red Sox. But with this current regime, I don't know that they love the fact that he doesn't do all of that on a team that already has a lot of defensive problems, because the Red Sox have a lot of defensive liabilities out there. A lot of guys that can't play defense, a lot of guys that you want to say, we want to put this guy at DH. And you know that he doesn't want to move off of the position. And that point that you bring up is well made, I will say, to a degree. Now, is that top two of Roman Anthony and Alex Bregman anywhere close to Lindor and Soto? No. But I do think that he would, it wouldn't be, if you're in the position of your Pete Alonso and you're saying, okay, I'm not going to be in the same lineup as Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, that fallback of hitting behind Bregman and Roman Anthony is not a bad fallback. It's maybe not the best fallback, but it's not bad. You're not going to a lineup that doesn't have guys who can hit, that would give you a chance to hit with some guys on base or see better pitches because, we don't want to pitch to Roman Anthony with a runner at third. So we'll be careful with him. Oh, hey, Pete Alonso, you come up with a chance to drive the run in.
The old John Henry, the great John Henry, one of the best owners in MLB history before he became this John Henry, was a guy who probably would have gone out, gotten Alonso, gotten Bregman, and then add another starting pitcher like Merrill Kelly or Lucas Giolito, bring him back, and really make you feel great about this team. I just don't see him getting 2 of these 3 big hitters. But I have one more thing that I want to talk about with you. From a Dodgers perspective, who's the team right now? Maybe start in the NL where you're watching their offseason and you're saying, like, I really hope they don't add a lot of guys here, because I know Mets fans feel like they could jump right back into the mix here after being in the championship series last year, missing the playoffs this past season. But who's the team for you, if there even is one? Is it the Padres? Is it the Giants? Where you're like, I hope that this is a pretty dormant offseason because I think they could make a real run at the Dodgers next year.
I think it's the Mets. With as much problems as the Mets had last year, I think it is the Mets. If the Mets get some starting rotation help, which they desperately need, then I think they have to be right back in that conversation.
Yeah, and I think the Brewers last year showed you that if a team's going to take out the Dodgers, it has to be the big spender. And I don't think the Phillies are going to be the team this year that just goes crazy in the offseason and adds 2 or 3 impact players. But the Mets, absolutely, after already adding Williams, they could bring back DIAZ, they could bring back Alonso, they could add Bellinger, they could add Schwarber. I mean, they have a lot of different routes they can go with Steve Cohen.
If they added Bellinger, that would be an extremely fascinating. Where would, just out of curiosity, if you were to project that out, where would he fit into their system?
I think he just takes the Nimmo spot, hit 4, play left field, assuming they bring back Alonso also. You keep Alonso in the 3 spot, and your top 4 is Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Bellinger. I mean, that if you miss the playoffs, if you lose the division with that, that's just cursed franchise.
Yeah, fire everybody.
Yeah,
I will say though, I would be really like, if you get Bellinger, fine, but I would be really, I don't want to say annoyed. There's not a right word for it, but it just wouldn't feel right putting him at first base. And he can play a Gold Glove first base, but he could also play a Gold Glove premium outfield position. And if you do that, do you maybe have the conversation, hey, Juan Soto, maybe you might want to learn how to play a little bit of first base.
Yeah, it's realistic. And they have their 2 top prospects are outfielders. Soto, you got such a long contract that at some point there at least has to be a conversation about, can you play any first? Can we put you at first 10 games a year?
Yeah.
Just to open the door for another guy to get 30 more at-bats, 40 more at-bats in a season. Can you play first base 10 or 11 times in an entire season? And I think he probably could. I don't think it would be pretty, but I think you could probably do it and survive for those. But Bellinger would be a perfect fit for them. I think the Yankees will get him back, but there is a scenario, I think, where Brian Cashman says, we think Tucker is a far better hitter to put in front of or behind Aaron Judge for the next 3 years where Judge's prime still exists. And we want to just go for it, and we'll live with the back end of the contract. So we're going to go after Tucker, and Bellinger gets left aside because now you have Grisham there for the $22 million on the year with that qualifying offer. It's a lot of interesting stuff with the 2 New York teams.
Super last point about the Mets, and a question for you. If they do make that Bellinger move, what would you say about the possibility of them taking, maybe even, it would probably cost you both of those 2 outfield prospects, but taking some of those prospects and calling up a Minnesota or calling up a Detroit and saying, deal?
They have to.
Yeah.
And
that would,
what I always say to Mets fans, or now I don't say it as much because I try not, like, they went from having the Will Ponds to Steve Cohen. So they went from being a middle of the pack spender and not an aggressive one at all to ultimate spender in professional sports. And I know that people like to poke fun at Hal Steinbrenner. You can relate to this as a Dodgers fan, though. When you have an owner who's willing to spend at an organization who's top 3 or top 5 in payroll, because even the Phillies have been living off this for a few years, you can ship out those prospects and go sign big money 1-year, 2-year veterans and feel fine about your team every year.
Exactly. And I feel like that feels like something that needs to, now I become Mets go get Bellinger and then go call Minnesota, call Detroit first. If Detroit says, yeah, we're not making Skubal available, go call Detroit. And then you say, I'm Steve Cohen, I'll just get Skubal in the next offseason.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to get Skubal or Skeens or both in the next few years. We're at that point, unfortunately, in baseball where guys are just going to get signed by the Mets, Yankees, or Dodgers at some point in their career, it feels like. And right now, Skubal's next up, and they need starting pitching. The starting pitching is the reason they didn't make the playoffs last year. Their offense was not, and their offense had flaws for sure. Bottom of their order stunk, but you slot Skubal in, he's winning 20 games next year. Yeah. Especially if you do bring in Bellinger or Alonso, and you don't even have to pay Skubal next year besides his arbitration salary.
I would add one more thing, super last thing about Skubal. I would make it a point to do that now because you don't know what the deal with the CBA is going to be. So I would say there's got to be some pressure to go get him now because your point is well made. Right now in the climate that we're in, it just seems like that everybody's going to end up with the Yankees, the Dodgers, the top 7 or 8 market spenders in baseball. That is without any real wholesale changes to the CBA. And if you're Steve Cohen, you don't know what that's going to look like. So this might be your last chance to just go get Skubal with your FU prospects and your FU money to go make that deal. Do it.
And I think the CBA is going to be the interesting storyline, underlying theme of this offseason, because I think Devin Williams already had a moment with it where he got a 3-year guaranteed deal. It wasn't with an option. I don't think you're going to see those heavy early contract options that you saw on the Alonso or Bregman contracts last year, or on most of these contracts that are given out to the kind of B-tier star free agents every offseason. Guys are going to want the guaranteed money beyond 2027, and that could help teams out where a guy that maybe could get $30 million, $35 million, but they don't want to spend that on that player for the year can say, I'll give you a 5 or 6 year deal for more total money, less annual. And I think both parties feel pretty good about just securing a future beyond 2027.
Oh, the business aspect of baseball. Gotta love it.
Absolutely. Gotta love it. All right, Sarge, thanks so much, man. Love having you. We'll talk more throughout the offseason on baseball stuff. Good luck with the Dodgers this offseason, even though I probably shouldn't even be wishing you that after what they've done to every other team in baseball the last 2 years. But good luck with the Dodgers offseason. I hope they don't get Tucker and DIAZ, but maybe
I do too. I hope. And the other thing, just also one more thing. I don't like baseball being unbalanced. So I don't want the Dodgers, for the sake of the sport, to get all these guys because, and that's such a counterintuitive thing to say as a fan. Oh, I don't want my team to get all the best players, but I like baseball being balanced. And there's an imbalance that's growing in college sports, and it's making me very sad, and I don't want that to come to our beautiful game.
Not for nothing, we did get one of the best 7-game World Series of all time this year, so as imbalanced as it is, baseball's still giving us some good moments, even if the Brewers-Dodgers series and every other Dodgers series before that was terrible. The World Series was awesome.
The Phillies series terrible. I wouldn't call the Phillies series terrible.
It towed the line of watchable 4-game series, and obviously the Dodgers are going to win. Why am I even watching this?
Yeah. And obviously the other ones, Milwaukee series, Cincinnati series, hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby.
I mean, that's a compliment, too, to the other teams.
Well, what do you say all the time about the NL Central? What do you say about the
we know it. I mean, we've been right about the NL Central and the AL Central forever. They get to the playoffs. I mean, it's a miracle that Cleveland got to the championship series last year, and they were able to get by Houston, because the fact that these teams even think they can compete for a World Series, complete nonsense. Maybe the Cubs, once every 110 years, will get the job done, spend a little money, but we're not going to see that again in this lifetime.
They go a century without spending money, and it's like, okay, now we'll spend money, we'll win a championship, and then we won't spend any more money for the next century. So,
but if the Reds get Schwarber, watch out for Francona and the Reds. They might be coming. All right, Sarge, thanks, man. Love having you. Enjoy the rest of the winter sports season. Enjoy the MLB offseason, and we'll have you on again, hopefully in 2-3 weeks, talk about some of the results of free agency.